What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I am Andy Herman. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a lot to discuss. We had a OTA practice on Tuesday that was open to the media, so we'll get through all of my observations from that. We also had a Matt LaFleur press conference, so let's kick things off there. We had a couple noteworthy items from Matt LaFleur's presser, starting off with training camp, and we found out that the date for training camp is actually going to be July 27th for that very first practice. Rookies will report on July 22nd, so you can start penciling things in and start getting your schedules ready. Training camp will kick off first practice on July 27th. Remember that padded practices can't happen right away, so there's going to be a handful of practices that are not padded to kick things off with training camp, but eventually they'll get to padded practices. So if you want to attend some of those, make sure you wait a little bit, but first training camp practice will be July 27th. Always a buzz surrounding that first practice. Always fun to get out to, so cannot wait for that. But again, rookies report July 22nd, and training camp will be July 27th for that very first practice. Once again, Matt LaFleur was also asked about David Bakhtiari, and I don't want to go too much into this because we know what we know at this point, which is frankly not a heck of a lot, but I will get into his response. So the question to Matt LaFleur was, is there anything that could keep Bakhtiari from practicing in camp? And his response was, time will tell. We thought he'd be ready last training camp, but he did say we fully anticipate him being ready to go, which is the most encouraging, I think, sentence that we've heard yet from Matt LaFleur. Again, quote, we fully anticipate him being ready to go. So again, he did add the caveat that time will tell, and we thought he'd be ready last training camp, but that's probably the best sort of statement that we've gotten out of the Packers and Matt LaFleur so far. And if you listen back to my episode specifically discussing David Bakhtiari, remember I said if you're looking for any positive sign, it's that Green Bay really hasn't added any true offensive tackles to this roster, right? Except for Rasheed Walker in the 7th round. They've let their veteran offensive tackles go. They haven't added any big time players there. So the thought process there would be that if David Bakhtiari, if they thought he was going to be out for any significant period of time or not be able to make it back, you would have thought they would handle this offseason a little bit differently. But you love hearing from Matt LaFleur. We fully anticipate him being ready to go. Again, he did add a couple caveats there, but ultimately, hopefully, that is a very good sign, and we will see David Bakhtiari once that July 27th training camp practice rolls around. He did also mention that Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Tunyon, Hill, all of the ACL recovery guys are all making progress, and basically said we'll know more about those guys when training camp comes around, but he did make mention that all 4 were making progress. In addition, there was some question as to whether or not Allen Lazard would actually make his first appearance at OTAs after he signed his contract, but that was not to be. That was not the case. He was not at OTAs on Tuesday, so no practice for Allen Lazard, which may seem a little bit, maybe surprising on the surface, but when you realize just exactly how many Packers were missing from practice and OTAs this past week, it becomes a little bit more understandable, I guess, at that point. Good news, Juwann Winfree was back practicing. If you remember, he sort of dropped out of that last mini camp practice. And there was some question as to whether or not he suffered some sort of injury, but he was right back practicing, had a couple really nice plays. In fact, arguably the play of the day as well. Had a really nice catch in red zone from Kurt Benkert, who lofted a perfect pass in the back corner of the end zone, and Winfree made a sliding catch, staying in bounds on that specific play. So really nice play from Winfree there. And then in the 2-minute drill, 3rd and 10, not much time left, he catches a 41-yard deep post from Jordan Love. Raleigh Tejada in coverage. Winfree blew right past him, made the catch. May have had a chance to eventually score had it been actually a live play. Tejada would have had to get him to the ground instead of more of just a 2-hand touch on the play, but really, really gorgeous route and play and catch from Juwann Winfree, again with a 41-yard deep post bomb from Jordan Love in the 2-minute period to set up the go-ahead or the potential tying touchdown there. So great day from Juwann Winfree, and just great to see him back more than anything. Another player who was back practicing was Mason Crosby. He was with the rehab group in mini camps, but he was back practicing and kicking on Tuesday, so great to see that. Doesn't seem like there's any sort of significant injury there. No sign of newest kicker Gabe Brkic, however, so that was interesting, I guess. They didn't announce the move, the Packers, until after OTA practice, so maybe he'll be there. Maybe it was a travel issue, who knows, but no Gabe Brkic. We didn't get our first glimpse at him, so that will have to wait until training camp, assuming he's still on the roster at that point. one player who was there, and there were about 55 total players that were actually practicing. The only key players that I would say were actually practicing were John Runyon Jr., Mason Crosby, Jordan Love, Josh Myers, the top rookies. Like, those are sort of your key guys you're keeping an eye on. And then Rashawn Gary. All of the other key guys are out. Aaron Rodgers is out. You've got Alan Lazard out. You've got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon out. No David Bakhtiari, even with the rehab group. You had, no Preston Smith, no Kenny Clark, no Dean Lowry, no Chris Barnes, no Devondre Campbell, no Jair Alexander, no Eric Stokes, no Adrian Amos, no Darnell Savage. All of those guys missing in action. But you know who's there? Rashawn freaking Gary. The grind just never stops for him. He is constantly working. And as Zach Cruz pointed out on Twitter, turns out that being a freak athlete and an absolute football junkie turns out to be a pretty good combination. I'm paraphrasing there a bit, but yeah, no kidding, right? Dude's an insane athlete, and he just has a insatiable thirst for the sport of football. You can tell he loves being a Packer, but with everyone and so many high-profile players not at OTAs, the one key guy that was there was Rashawn Gary. And by the way, he had a couple nice plays as well, including a very quick pressure on Kirk Benkert on a rush against Cole Van Lanen as well. So love seeing Rashawn Gary out there, even in an OTA where almost everyone else is gone. He's still grinding, and that just fits him so incredibly well. As mentioned, about 55 total players that were actually practicing. I never want to judge anyone here for not being there because we simply don't know the story. We don't know what they're going through. These are not mandatory practices, but it was interesting to me, at least in some capacity, that this was another OTA that Jonathan Garvin was missing. I don't believe he was at any of the OTA practices that were open to the public. He was at mandatory minicamp, but it just seems crazy that, he's in this competition with a variety of different edge rushers who are competing for spots on this team. That number 3 edge rusher spot is totally up for grabs, it would seem. And yet Jonathan Garvin hasn't been at any of the OTAs. In my opinion, that does not bode well for Garvin. I know, again, it's not mandatory, but yeah, it's one thing for, Adrian Amos and Aaron Rodgers and some of these high-end players not to be there. But man, if you are a fringe roster guy, you really want to see those type of players there. And again, not judging Garvin because we don't know what his reasons were, but just not great for his overall development and not great for him heading into training camp. He's going to have a very strong training camp to make up for some of that lost time with not being there at OTAs. All right, let's jump into actual practice and some of the things that we saw. Let's start with Jordan Love. I thought Jordan Love had a pretty nice day, a couple ups and downs. He did have a low throw that should have probably been picked to KB Anento. A couple throws that him and his receivers just weren't on the same page, which is totally understandable. He's working with a lot of rookies, a lot of guys that aren't used to getting a ton of playing time. There's no Alan Lazard there. There's no Sammy Watkins there. There's no Randall Cobb there, right? So he's working with younger wide receivers in this situation, but it should have been a pick by KB Anento on the play. But overall, he had a really nice touchdown throw to Romeo Doubs in red zone drills. He had a really nice hard count that resulted in a free play and then hit Amari Rodgers on a back shoulder touchdown in red zone drills. And then he once again led his team, his offense, to a 2-minute drill touchdown, which he's now done in 2 straight practices, ending with the mini camp last week and then picking it right back up here. So this was not an easy scenario. Minute 30-ish left, 0 timeouts, 80 yards to go, and he led his team down the field for another touchdown drive. So thought this was a nice day from Jordan Love. A couple throws he would love to have back, but overall, really solid performance. Good in red zone, good in 2-minute drill. And, you could make the argument of like, well, yeah, he's throwing against, Raleigh Tejada and Keandre Thomas and Rico Gafford. This isn't exactly Jair, Douglas, and Stokes, but he's also not working with his full complement of weapons. No Aaron Jones, no A.J. Dillon, no Bakhtiari or Jenkins along the offensive line. No Robert Tonyan, no Alan Lazard, no Sammy Watkins, no Randall Cobb. So lots of guys missing for Jordan Love as well. Thought it was evenly matched, for the most part between offense and defense. And at the end of the day, all you can do is go out and perform with the players that you have. And again, I thought this was probably Jordan Love's best day of practice that he's had so far this offseason. Speaking of that 2-minute drill, let's bring you through each of those plays. Again, about a minute 36, to go, if I remember correctly. Down by 7, your own 20-yard line. You've got 80 yards to go. Started off with an incompletion to Christian Watson. Watson and Love just weren't on the same page. Really tough to tell in that situation if that's Watson cutting the route off at the wrong spot, or if Jordan Love was inaccurate on the pass, or both, or a little bit of either. You just don't know, but they were not on the same page. Love threw incomplete, wasn't close to Watson on the play. Then the next play, it looked like they came back with the exact same play, exact same route. And on that play, Watson caught it. I thought that it was at about the 9-yard mark and he did not get out of bounds, but they gave him the first down and ruled him out of bounds. So a little bit of a benefit to the offense there. And then Love came back right away, completed another pass to Watson over the middle. Clock's ticking. He then gets a check down to BJ Baylor, which goes basically nowhere. And then it was basically what I would consider like a throwaway over the middle. It was basically like a pseudo spike where he took a quick glance. Nobody was there. His middle guy was covered and he just kind of threw it at his feet, which ultimately, again, basically resulted in a spike. Probably took a little bit too long. Probably should have just spiked that play, but ultimately doesn't end up too much different. The very next play was sort of the pivot point of this entire drive. It's a 4th and 3 play. An interesting play call here. They call a screen pass to Tyler Davis, and it's Tyler Davis and blockers versus Quay Walker in the open field. Walker makes a great play. To me, Walker clearly got Davis down before the first down mark, and that would have been the end of the drive. Instead, they give Davis the first down on the play, and maybe Davis could have broke a tackle. Maybe, I think ultimately they just wanted to see the drive continue one way or the other. But I thought it was a phenomenal play by Quay Walker. Probably would have ended the drive there, but they keep it there. They keep it going anyway. Next play is a incomplete pass deep down the sideline to Romeo Doubs. Double coverage. Not a great read, not a great throw. Throw let him out of bounds. In fact, if anyone was going to catch it, it was probably a defender there, but pass falls harmlessly incomplete. Then he hit the deep post on the 41-yarder to Winfrey. They spiked the ball, and that leaves 5 seconds on the clock from the 9-yard line. Basically one play, down by 7, have the opportunity to go for the kill here, and he hits Samori Toure over the middle for a touchdown. So that Love-Toure connection in back-to-back practices pays off. He had 3 of the catches on the 2-minute drive last week in minicamp on the touchdown drive, and then this play he gets the actual touchdown to what could have tied things up. Instead, they go for 2. Pressure on the play as well as great coverage on the back end. Love just has to heave one up. You know, the one thing that I would like to see here from Jordan Love, there's no time left. You're down by 1. This is the last play of the game. It's either win or lose. You got to throw it up somewhere in the end zone. Instead, he ends up throwing it away well out of the end zone. You just got to give your players a chance. And if it's picked, it's picked. It doesn't matter at that point. So that would have been the one thing I would have liked to see differently from Jordan Love on that play. But overall, really nice drive by Jordan Love. You could argue that I don't even think argue. To me, Quay Walker easily got Tyler Davis down in that situation. It was a great play from Quay Walker. That's not the first time we saw that from Walker either. I've seen him on a couple different plays, read screen, get around a blocker, and go make a play. I've been impressed so far from Quay Walker and what he's shown. And on this day, with no Chris Barnes, with no Devondre Campbell, guess who's the one that's calling the plays? It was Quay Walker. He got that opportunity as well. So nice day from him, and he continues to make progress as a first-round rookie. Another rookie who made some splash plays, both good and bad, was Kingsley Enagbare. I thought he made a really good step, and this was clearly Enagbare's best practice that's been open to the media. He had a really nice tackle for loss in the run game where he got the running back probably about 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I believe he beat Runyon on the play, but don't quote me on that. Then he had another run stuff where he combined with Jack Heflin to stop the running back at about, a positive 2 yards on that play, but still was a nice play from Enagbare, setting the edge, getting off his block, and then making a play. And then he also had another really nice pressure in a different session. So a couple really nice plays from Enagbare, again, his best practice, but on that aforementioned free play for Jordan Love that resulted in the touchdown in the red zone drills, it was Kingsley Enagbare who jumped off sides. Coaches were all over him, had to get taken off of the field because he made the mistake. And luckily he got back in and the pressure was after that, so kind of earned his way back. But that's something that clearly cannot happen, and his coaches were all over him for that. But I thought this was a really nice day overall, and his best practice for Kingsley Enagbare so far. Cole Van Lanen got to see our first chance and first look at him at right guard. So the starting offensive line was the same. You had Yash Nijman, John Runyon Jr., Josh Myers, Royce Newman, and Cole Van Lanen. But in previous practices, we saw the next rotation of that was the same, except it was Jake Hansen who got in at right guard and then Royce Newman at right tackle. On this day, they moved Newman to right tackle and pushed Cole Van Lanen in at right guard. So our first opportunity to see him at right guard. Also wanted to quickly touch base on Danny Davis. All of this was in like walkthroughs and stuff, but I thought he had a nice day of practice overall, but a couple of just fun, unique wrinkles. We saw Danny Davis on a jet sweep. We saw him used as an H-back a little bit. We saw him on a little quick pat. Like, we just saw Davis used in a couple different ways that made me a little bit more intrigued. I still think he's probably a practice squad guy at best, and he's fighting for one of those practice squad spots, but thought it was his best day of practice. So for those Wisconsin fans out there, got to see a little bit more out of Danny Davis in this practice. Starting offense on this day was Jordan Love at quarterback, Tyler Goodson at running back, Davis at tight end, Dobbs, Amari Cooper, and Watson at wide receiver. And sorry, Amari Rogers. It would be great if it was Amari Cooper, Amari Rogers, and then Watson at wide receiver, Yosh Nijman at left tackle, John Runyon Jr. at left guard, Josh Myers at center, Royce Newman at right guard, and Cole Van Lannon at right tackle. Starting defense on this day was Devondre Wyatt and TJ Slayton on the line, Rashawn Gary and Kobe Jones on the edge, McDuffie and Quay Walker at inside linebacker, Keandre Thomas, Rico Gafford, and KB Nento at corner, and then Innis Gaines and Vernon Scott at safety. So those were your quote-unquote starters on this day. I'm going to go out on a limb and say those will not be your starting lineups against the Minnesota Vikings in week 1. Also got a chance, I know I mentioned Tyler Goodson was with the ones, but Tyler Goodson and BJ Baylor both split reps. One of them would be with the ones, the other would be with the twos, and they both sort of switched back and forth. So didn't seem like one was necessarily ahead of the other. In the 2-minute drill, in the red zone drills, we did get a really nice, just clean catch out of the backfield from Tyler Goodson on a quick swing pass. But what was exciting about it was his explosion up the field. I think he got in the end zone on that play, but just seeing him make a quick catch, get quickly turned around up the field, and an explosive gain. I thought that was a really nice play from Tyler Goodson. And then last but not least, Amari Rogers had a nice day as well. I mentioned that back shoulder touchdown. Also had a crazy concentration catch touchdown. So I mentioned earlier that KB and Ento should have had a pick off of Jordan Love. It was a really low throw. Ento made a diving play at the ball. The ball ricocheted up off of his hands into the air. Amari Rogers caught it in stride in the air and took it in the end zone for a touchdown. So again, a couple touchdowns on the day in red zone drills for Amari Rogers. And he seemingly is continuing to progress and hopefully is gaining that confidence that was lacking a season ago and is exactly what he needs to get back to playing the way he did at Clemson. So those were my key takeaways from practice. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to subscribe. Even if you didn't, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe. I will be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode, so make sure to check it out. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.